Mayor, if you want to hold the mic up right to your...
Get lost. Okay, anybody else? Okay, can we all put hands on our shoulders, or
You want to run it up too? 'Cause he's-
I think that's gonna work. We have
a prayer circle?
a hands-on experience here.
Yes,
Okay.
You give your invocation, please.
Okay. Dear God, we come tonight and we give you thanks for the blessings that you give us in so many ways. The privilege of being a part of a community like Bonita and all the just the opportunities that we have here, Lord. We thank you for that. We thank you for your grace and your love and care over us. And Lord, I pray that you'll be with our city leaders, that you will give them wisdom and grant them guidance, Lord, as they make decisions that impact the lives of others. We pray, Lord, for those who serve in our military, that guard our freedoms and that just provide so many things for us. Let us never take that for granted. And God, we thank you for knowing us and loving us and watching over us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please stay. We're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance. We're gonna try and do it in unison. And to do that, I'm gonna go 1, 2, and the 3 will be I, okay? I pledge allegiance, so let's see if we can get it all together here. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, if City Council will bear with me, I'd like to read the proclamation of National Words of National Day of Prayer. If that'd be all right with Council?
Sure.
Okay. That's the proclamation. Whereas the 71st anniversary of National Day of Prayer is a day set aside by Congress for all Americans to pray and reaffirm their spiritual principles on which this nation is founded. Whereas the National Day of Prayer was called for in the First Continental Congress in 1775 and called for by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863, and thereas in 1952, Congress established National Day of Prayer as an annual event by a joint resolution signed into law by President Harry S. Truman. And thereas in 1988, Congress and President Ronald Reagan amended the law to designate the first Thursday in May as National Day of Prayer. Whereas National Day of Prayer gives us an opportunity as a community to pray for our community, our nation, and our world. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Rick Steinmeier, on behalf of the City Council, hereby proclaim May 5th as National Day of Prayer. God bless America. Thank you. Oh, yeah, we gotta get a photo. Thank you. Here, Jeff. Okay, Deb, about roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Here.
Councilman Purdon?
Here.
Councilwoman Carr?
Here.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Here.
Councilman Corey?
Here.
Councilman Gibson?
Here.
Councilman Forbes?
Here.
Approval of minutes, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I have one request to change. Item 8A on the agenda, asking that that be continued. This was the Entrada Administrative Appeal. I think we've got that resolved, but to get it all finalized in writing, I'm just going to ask to continue it. But I've got a conditional withdrawal of the appeal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Good work.
Okay, mayor's welcome, you're all welcome to come and stay. Now we have public comment on anything except 8B. Please come forward.
Of course, I'm back. Deborah Giambo, Bel Rio Drive. So this is in regard to, I believe it's agenda item number 11, the crosswalks on West Terry. I want to thank you for your willingness to continue this discussion. Thank you to Councilman Gibson for bringing this forward on the agenda. And I'm just here to urge you, and I'll keep my comments very brief, to move forward with this. At the March 2nd meeting, many council members expressed interest and a desire to know more specifically about the types of table crosswalks that require cars to slow as they pass. I'd like to urge you to continue consideration of those types of crosswalks, which, as I understand, are those that were originally approved in 2016 and which were never installed. I did send an email to all of you with contact information for that engineering firm that can apply for federal funds and install the crosswalks and expedite that because of our situation at no cost to the city. I'm happy to send that information to you again. I thank you again for your willingness to continue this discussion, and I look forward to the discussion a little bit later. I will be watching online. I must leave, in addition to my husband with a broken leg and foot from being hit and run in the crosswalk. I have a son who's very sick, so I will go and feed everyone and take care of fevers and those kinds of things. It's not COVID. But thank you so much, and I'll look forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you,
bless.
dear. Any other public comment? Uh, 8B, who's going to present 8B?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, this is a second reading and public hearing of a zoning ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, considering a request to rezone approximately 20 acres from residential plan development to residential plan development for 200 dwelling units and to request 4 deviations. Located at 12585 East Terry Street, Bonita Springs, Florida, 34135, and providing for an effective date. This item is a quasi-judicial hearing, so at this time, I see the remainder of the applicant's team arriving. What I'd ask is anyone who intends to speak, staff, the applicant, the consultants, any members of the public who are concerned, who may feel the moment moves them to come forward and speak during the public hearing, I'd ask that you please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you very much. And at this time, I'd ask that staff give a brief introduction of what the item is. Then the applicant will have the initial presentation. If you have additional questions, you can ask questions at that point. Then staff can give a full presentation if necessary, although their materials are all in your packet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Mike Fegun with Community Development for the record. We'll give you a brief overview per usual, and then we'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation. As Derek read in the title block, this is a rezoning request for 200 dwelling units and 4 deviations on a property located at the corner of East Terry Street and Kent Road. The case was heard by the zoning board back on April 19th. They did vote in favor of the case 5-2. However, they did recommend that staff and the applicant work a little bit more on 2 of staff's traffic conditions, which are conditions 5 and 6 in your draft ordinance. In the ordinance, you will see that staff's draft amendments to those conditions. I do believe the applicant still has some concerns about staff's language, so I have no doubt they will be covering that in their presentation. They did also provide some additional language on their own. It was emailed to you, and it's also available on the website. I have hard copies if you'd like it as well for what their preferred version is of conditions 5 and 6. Additionally, there were some concerns raised by the zoning board about one of the deviations that has to do with setbacks. Staff and the applicant did work more on that to make it a little bit more clear in this presentation exactly what that request entails and why we're recommending approval of it. So we will also be covering that. And there are also various options proposed for how to deal with that. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to the applicant and Jeremy Franz to make their presentation.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Frantz with RVI Planning and Landscape Architecture. Here today representing Soltura Development Group for the Soltura at East Terry planned development rezone. So in addition to myself, we also have Danville Ledbetter with Soltura Development Group. We have Neil Montgomery, Pavese Law Firm, Rick Berlansky from Holmontez, Ted Trish, TR Transportation Consultants, Barrett Stayskull with Bear Paws Environmental Consulting, and Andrea Douglas is, with Verdant Studios is our landscape architect. You all may be familiar with Soltura Development Group, but really quickly, brief introduction. Been local developers here for the past 15 years with experience in a variety of different product types, including master plan communities, and using innovative approaches to housing needs, and that's really what we're here to talk about today too. So there is another project similar to what we're proposing here in Bonita Springs in Fort Myers at the Forum, and you can see the website for that development there. That's currently in development. The subject property today is approximately 20 acres accessed from East Terry, about a half-mile west of Bonita Grand, and at the intersection of East Terry and Kent Road. The site itself is, as you'll see in a couple of future slides, a very heavily impacted site from historical activities. On this aerial, you can see it's surrounded by a variety of residential, vacant ag lots, some public and semi-public uses to the south at the YMCA and the soccer fields, and directly to the south across East Terry is the Pine Lake Preserve. The property is designated high-density residential in the future land use element in the future land use map. That designation provides for a wide range of residential product types, including multifamily, up to a standard density of 10 units per acre and a maximum height of 75 feet. The current zoning on the property is the Eagle Lakes RPD. It is from 2008 allows for 200 dwelling units at 10 units per acre and a maximum height of 35 feet or 3 stories. You can see the layout on the screen. There are a number of multifamily buildings along the, if I can make this work, along the western and northern property boundaries, as well as the southern boundary adjacent to East Terry, with a single access on East Terry there. Our request today does not include any increase in the density or height that was previously approved. So we're limited to 200 dwelling units and a maximum height of 35 feet. And in fact, we're reducing the maximum number of stories from 3 to 2. Our request will modify the site layout to accommodate this multifamily cottage apartment product that we'll get into more detail in just a moment, and kind of update the site layout to accommodate that different product. We include 4 deviations related to parking requirements, lake setbacks from rights-of-way, lake sinuosity, and the perimeter setback, and we'll probably get into more on those deviations as we go. And of course, we're modifying the master concept plan to accommodate all of those things. As Mike already mentioned, we're in agreement with staff on the majority of the conditions in the ordinance, and just looking for some clarity on the 2 transportation-related conditions, and also have some proposed language for condition 11. We'll put all that on the screen. We also have a handout that we can give you to see that language close up. So our proposed master concept plan, you can see a number of residential tracts. That's these blocks here. Those don't represent individual buildings, but tracts where residential development may occur. You can see here in the center, front and center, there is an amenity center tract. We have 2 access points to East Terry. This easternmost access is exit only. We have 3 lakes.
What was that again? Bicycle?
Exit only.
Exit only.
Excellent, yes, sir.
We have 3 lakes proposed along the eastern and southern property boundaries, and there is a preserve area along the eastern side of the property. This master concept plan, we think, provides for a number of improvements over the existing Eagle Lakes residential plan development. So we're providing for more consistency with the land development code, fewer deviations from the code than previously approved. We're providing for that multiple points of access on East Terry, increasing open space, and improving the stormwater management system on site. There will be a reduced bulk of the buildings that are adjacent to residential. So what we're talking about there is essentially here, rather than having large multifamily buildings up to 3 stories, you'll see some renderings of similar product types that are much more compatible with surrounding neighbors. We're, like I said, reducing the maximum number of stories and providing a larger setback from East Terry Street with kind of an improved streetscape there. You can see a multi-use trail easement that'll be dedicated to the public as well. So the cottage-style apartments, it's kind of a unique concept. It is especially unique here in Southwest Florida, but is really growing in popularity very quickly throughout the country and in other parts of the state. So what that means is we'll have a number of freestanding apartments. They'll have their own front and back patios, and it's kind of easy to think of them as a deconstructed apartment building. So rather than one or a couple of apartment buildings on site, break that apart into scattered cottage apartments throughout the property. We'll include 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. It provides for a number of benefits to residents, like no down payment, no mortgage, no maintenance, and also no shared walls that you'd experience in an apartment setting, a traditional apartment setting. The amenities will be similar to a typical master plan community, multifamily type of setting, and again, I'll show you some examples here. So these are renderings from other Soltura developments and not necessarily representing Soltura at East Terry, but very similar types of product design layout. So it gives you a sense for what that compatibility will be with the surrounding neighbors and what this cottage apartment product looks like. So here you can see a couple or a number of 2-unit or multiple unit buildings with parking in front, very typical of what you would see in an apartment style, multifamily style setting. Here's a single unit. Run through a couple of pictures here of a few different styles. So here's a 2-story concept and a 1-story. You can see a lot of landscaping throughout the project. Like I said, we anticipate a amenity center in the center of the property, and this is something that we can expect similar on Soltura at East Terry. The entryway, again, we think is going to be a vast improvement over what was previously proposed and what's there now on East Terry. And this might be the best example of how this really functions like an apartment. So, you're looking at blue sky and landscaping in between, but very similar to a hallway in an apartment building. So here's a cross-section of Soltura. You're looking to the north, and you can see the western property boundary here, the eastern property boundary here, preserves, and you can see how breaking up all of those, the multifamily buildings into a number of cottage-style apartments really provides for a much more similar product as the existing residential that's in Morton Grove. So you've got very reduced bulk, you have separated buildings, and we think is going to provide for a lot more compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. Similar concept here, but cutting the property from a north-south direction. So here is your northern property boundary, and here's your southern property boundary at East Terry. From here, I'm going to turn it over to a couple of our experts, and Barrett Stayskull with Bear Paws can talk through some of the environmental aspects of the property.
Can I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
I like the idea of no shared walls. Shared walls with a neighbor.
Yeah, so what we mean by that is, typically in your apartment building, you've probably got 1 or 2 or 4 shared walls, ceiling and floor. In these units, you can see, especially right there in the center, I keep pressing the wrong button. Right in the center there, you can see how these buildings are broken apart. So it provides for a little more privacy than your typical apartment building.
I like that idea. The neighbor pounding on the wall. Okay. Thank you.
Advance, and then there's your pointer.
All right, cool. Good afternoon, Barrett Stayskull, Bear Paws Environmental. I was hired by Soltura back in, I believe it was early 2021, to go out and do initial environmental assessment and species survey on the property. Historically, the property was most of it was a mobile home park, very disturbed. They had some native vegetation in the back, kind of scattered throughout, which is over the years been overtaken by a lot of exotics. Just hasn't been maintained. It's sat there just like anything in Southwest Florida. You leave it, anything takes over. But what we had done with the concept plan is we focused the preserve along the eastern half of the project, kind of incorporated what the best kind of habitat we had out there that we had, and kind of went with that route. We were able to incorporate, there were some heritage trees identified on site. We met with those guys out on the site and went through. We've been able to incorporate 3 of those heritage trees into the site plan and keep them there and not impact those. Over the numerous site inspections done, I've been out probably close to 6 times on the site. I did my initial assessment, updated species survey, was out with Laura on site, and out a few more times. We did note, if you go for tortoise burrows, most of those are up along the north. No evidence of any other protected species, no wetlands identified on site. There is few small cow ponds in the middle of the site that you can see on the flux map there. But outside of that, there's nothing there. Going forward with the species for the gopher tortoise, the project will have to abide by all state and federal guidelines set forth by the governing agencies moving forward when it comes to protected species. And that's what I've got to say environmentally.
Okay, very good.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you all.
Thank you, Barry.
I'm up. Hi, for the record, Rick Berlansky, civil engineer with Home Montez, professional engineer. I'd like to go over some of the stormwater enhancements we're doing for the project, and Jeremy had mentioned some of the lake systems we're doing. We will provide basically an on-site treatment train for the excess runoff. We're incorporating the preserve area as well as the wet detention, or the lakes, which will provide wet detention, storage, and water quality improvements. The outfall structure for the project will be over towards the southeast corner, and that's going to exit to East Terry Street And I'll get into a little bit of the existing conditions that we're mimicking the drainage pattern with the outfall structure. We're going to have a underground storm sewer system, so all the runoff on the site's going to be collected underground storm sewer systems and directed to the lake. Again, we're going to provide flood storage, and doing that, we're going to actually reduce quite a bit the runoff from the site. And I'll show you a little excerpt from the 2010 study that was done by the city on the Phase 1 master plan. We're reducing the peak runoff from the site considerably, about 5% of what it is today. And as a result of this type of water management system, one of the big advantages is reducing nutrients, which harm the outstanding waters, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus, with this wet detention design and the treatment train of the incorporating the preserve and the water management system. Typical perimeter setback, it will have a perimeter berm that will contain all the water on site, direct all the runoff from the site to the lake management system and not bleed over into any of the adjoining properties, keeping everything on site through our control structure and exiting to East Terry Street. And this is a section of the property where we'll have a perimeter berm along the property line and with respect to our setbacks for the buildings and whatnot, and incorporate any landscaping along the perimeter as well, incorporating with that berm. Some of this rolls into yours, Jeremy. Yeah. So, but let me say that on the stormwater management, I don't see my slide in here, but this system was modeled back in 2010 by the city as part of their Phase 1 master plan. I know Matt's very familiar with that program. There was an elaborate amount of watershed modeling done, analyzing. We're maintaining that same drainage pattern. This property actually discharges along East Terry Street and goes to the east, eventually to Bonita Grand Drive, and then eventually to Imperial River, south along Bonita Grand Drive, or through Pine Lakes actually as well, and heading into the downstream of Kiel Canal and the Imperial River. So we're maintaining the same allowable discharge rate for Imperial River. So for the 25-year event, which is South Florida recognizes a hurricane type event from a 10-inch rain or so over a 3-day period, we're reducing the peak runoff from the site from roughly 15 CFS down to 0.8. So a significant difference, so about 5% reduction. And clearly this water has gone to the direction of east. I went through the 2017 mapping as a result of the storm and Irma, and you can recognize that this is really on a ridge. The West Morton property to the west of us, that goes to the west and actually crosses 75 and goes to Imperial River, but takes a different route. We're not competing with that flow. We're actually going to the opposite direction, heading east, and we're right on a ridge, and it's pretty evident if you look through any of the Google Earth mapping, it actually shows that this is a distinct ridge when all that flooding occurred. And with that, I'll pass this on now to Jeremy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'll just jump in really quickly on this additional language for condition 11. Mike gave a preview that we were working on trying to clarify our perimeter setback deviation, and this was the result. So as Rick identified, our typical setback for principal structures will be 15 feet. There are a couple of areas on the property where, due to trying to save as much open space and preserve areas as possible, we're going to cut into that a little bit. So we've added some language here to specify that our deviation asking for separation of 5 feet to the perimeter is limited to accessory structures, fences, walls, those types of things. Principal structures, so your actual building that folks are going to be living in, will be no closer than 10 feet. So that's the purpose of this additional language that we're proposing today, and as far as I understand, staff is comfortable with that language as well. So that's going to lead us into the transportation discussion, and Ted is right here.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Ted Shreesh with TR Transportation Consultants. We conducted the transportation analysis as part of this rezoning submittal. The analysis showed that the project wouldn't have any level service impacts on East Terry. Again, this project is not asking for an increase in density over what's currently approved. The 200 units are currently approved. That's what we're asking for in this rezoning. We looked out, again, this is a short build-out time frame because this property is all under one ownership. So it's built as one development. It's a short construction time frame, typically a year or less to build out this property. And then it's leased up as a normal apartment community, so the build-out time frame is fairly short. So our analysis looked at during the build-out phase, at build-out, there'll be sufficient capacity on East Terry. We looked at an increase in background traffic during that time frame to account for additional trips that would happen due to other development that may happen in the area. And again, there was sufficient capacity on East Terry. We looked at the intersection of Kent Road and East Terry because we're creating the north leg of that intersection. If you're familiar with that area, there's already left turn lanes on East Terry at that intersection. We'll be creating a right turn lane as you're coming from the east, as you're coming from Bonita Grand Drive, to be able to turn right into that project. We'll be creating, as shown on the screen in the yellow highlight, is an easement for a future multi-use trail that the city will be able to build in the future. So that easement will be provided for a future multi-use trail.
You're giving that easement to the city?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So there was two conditions that Jeremy indicated that were placed by staff on this project related to transportation that were a little unique, that aren't typically placed on projects. And again, our approach to this project was this is not a unique project. This is a unique use. This detached cottage style apartment is a unique use in terms of how it's built and how it looks, but it's not a unique use. It exists around the country. Danville's here, the owner of the project. He can describe it in more detail, but these type of units exist around the country. He's just new to Southwest Florida. There are some that are under construction. There's one that Danville's working on right now in the city of Fort Myers. It's located in the Forum, right on just north of Colonial and I-75 that should be open fairly soon, but a very similar project. So it's not a unique use, it's just a unique concept in terms of how it looks. So the city placed some conditions on this that they weren't quite sure how it was going to function, even though we provided sufficient data to show this is a multifamily product. We utilize trip generation from the ITE trip generation report, which is what we do for every traffic study that we provide in the city. We provided traffic counts that we did at an existing facility that is located in Lakewood Ranch. If you're familiar with Lakewood Ranch, it's just to our north, about an hour and a half. There's an existing community. It's called Estia at Lakewood Ranch. It's almost exactly the same product as this, cottage style for rent apartment community. We conducted traffic counts at that facility, and that data showed that the trips generated by that community are almost identical to what ITE says is a multifamily facility. Staff wasn't quite concerned because it was just one site. We looked at 3 other sites in Texas. There's many, many sites in Texas. We looked at 3 sites in suburban Dallas. Again, conducted traffic counts at these sites. They're suburban Dallas, not near transit facilities, not near anything that would impact traffic generation. It's your typical suburban type apartment community. And again, the data showed very similar to a multifamily trip generation characteristics. In any other case, if we were conducting an independent trip generation study, if this were a unique use, 3 or 4 sites to survey would have been enough to say, yes, this is a multifamily use. But again, the city felt the need to place a condition to go another step further. This slide shows the steps that they would like for at least for condition 5. Condition 5 is related first to the analysis at the intersection of Kent Road and East Terry. Again, we have to do another traffic study when we come in for our site development permitting. And the city has an administrative code that outlines the procedures that we have to do for that analysis. In our analysis that we conducted as part of this traffic study that was submitted, again, as I referred back in my previous comments, the intersection was shown to operate just fine under the current conditions based on the build-out. And we projected out to 2026. Right now, that intersection operates as a two-way stop control. East Terry Street doesn't have to stop. Traffic coming out of the south from the Y has a stop sign. We'll have a stop sign coming from our project as you approach East Terry Street. The analysis showed all movements will operate at a level service C or better. So in any analysis I've ever done in Lee County and the city, level service C is well within the operational limits for an intersection. But the city went a few more steps and wanted us to look at the intersection if it were a roundabout, the intersection if it were a traffic signal. They wanted to go for a few more steps. Our analysis shows that there's no way this intersection would ever require a traffic signal. This is not, the volumes going through this intersection are nowhere near in need of a traffic signal. To warrant a traffic signal, you need volumes coming out of a side street that are fairly significant. If you drive up and down Terry Street, you're familiar with the signals on Terry Street. They're at your major intersections. As you come off of 41, there's a signal that goes into the Target shopping center. The signal at Old 41 was converted to a roundabout. There's a signal at Matheson. There's a signal at Pine. Is it Pine? I believe by the community center. So at major streets.
Kent is a dead-end street?
Kent is a dead-end street to the south. And as to the north, it'll only serve our community. And again, if you go back, this is the trip generation for our project. And again, we have 2 driveways with that eastern driveway, as Jeremy indicated, is an exit only. So our exiting traffic will be distributed to 2 driveway locations. So again, we're just being asked to be held to the code and the administrative code and the standards that the city has. And our proposed recommendation and wording of condition 5 is we'll conduct an analysis, we'll conduct a count, an updated count and an analysis of the intersection and determine the level of service at the time of the development order and identify if there's any needed improvements or any level of service deficiencies at the time of the development order. We don't think we should be responsible for evaluating the intersection for a roundabout or a traffic signal because the intersection of Kent Road and Bonita or East Terry is a city-controlled intersection. Again, condition 6 goes to the fact of the trip generation that I previously spoke about. This table at the bottom just kind of summarizes some of the trip generation data that we surveyed at the sites in Texas and at Lakewood Ranch. These are the trip rates. Basically, the trip rate is the trip per unit. You can see that the trip rates that we surveyed in the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour versus the ITE, which is what we utilized in our traffic analysis, is at the bottom, which is actually higher than the trip rates that we were surveyed at the existing property. So again, the data that we provided to the city, we felt demonstrated that this use is a multifamily product and should be treated as such and just like any multifamily product coming in for a development order approval, and any conditions requiring any monitoring are excessive. Staff, in their Condition 6 language, is asking for a monitoring condition for a period of at least 1 year to collect traffic data at the driveways. And this is, we feel, is excessive. DRIs, Development of Regional Impacts, your Coconut Points, they had a DRI, they had a traffic monitoring requirements typically, where the states required annual traffic monitoring counts to be done to analyze the trip generation of these large projects, to ensure that the trips that those projects generated and the impacts they had on the regional transportation network were properly evaluated. It's our opinion a 200-unit apartment community doesn't need an annual monitoring program. We've proposed an alternate condition that says after 1 year, after the final CO, within 1 year, we'll come back, we'll do a traffic count similar to what we did at the 4 properties, the 3 in Texas and the 1 at SDA at Lakewood Ranch. We'll do a 3-day traffic count. We'll come up with a trip rate to show the city this is a multifamily product. And we're fairly certain that the trip rate will verify the data that we've given them to this point. So those are the 2 conditions. We have printed copies to pass out, the alternate language that we would like the council to consider this evening. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
I've got
Yes,
what?
Jesse.
No, Jesse, you go.
Do you know what the total cost of the additional requirements that the city has put? So specifically, if you're going to do a roundabout and a traffic signal, and obviously the traffic monitorization for a period of a year, which is not generally the standard practice, do you have a cost on what those 3 pieces will cost you all?
I do not.
Okay. It doesn't change anything for me. I mean, I was curious if you guys had put those dollars together. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I? Ted, number 5, it says your language wants to change, indicates that the intersection does not function at an acceptable level of service with the traffic. Improvements will be identified that mitigates the poor level of, well, what then happens if there is some poor? Like, it's sort of then, and what happens?
Well, the mitigation this project is responsible for is the payment of road impact fees. So if there's an off-site improvement at that intersection that is needed, then our road impact fees could be utilized as part of that improvement. I mean, if it's caused by this project, then that would be a discussion at the time of the development order. The city could say, you have to make that improvement as a site-related improvement because your project is causing that level of service deficiency. Or if that level of service deficiency is as a result of other projects, then it would be it would be for information that the city could use to then identify a future improvement for that intersection, and they could program funding for future improvements.
Or like all the projects that are adding to the problem could chip in?
Right.
Okay, so you would be willing to add that into that? Because it kind of leaves you going, well, what if you're causing the problems?
Well, if the codes say, your codes say, if our project causes an issue, we have to mitigate that issue. That is in your codes, in your administrative codes, and in your traffic impact statement guidelines right now.
Okay, well, you crossed out a whole bunch of stuff, so, okay. I'm good. I think it's great.
Could I ask you to explain how you get in and out of that? I couldn't follow the entrance at all. It seems like the entrance is quite close to, I think it's Kenton Road. Could you put that, just explain how you get in there?
I'm sorry, say that quite close to what?
If you're, and this one that you have up there in the lower right-hand corner,
Right here?
yeah, is that Kent Road there? What is that?
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you I don't understand how you get into your property from, if you're traveling either,
Well, here's an aerial photo. So our driveway will be the north leg of this intersection. So it would be just a standard four-legged intersection.
so you could make a direct left-hand turn or a right-hand turn into your entrance there?
Yes,
Okay, so that would be not unusual,
not unusual. And then the other driveway will be over in this
Okay.
location over here.
because from the diagram, it looked like it was a little offset from.
No, it's directly aligned.
All right, that was my question, I guess. And I don't, and I guess it's not your question, but I have, I still don't understand about the berms of the perimeter setbacks and things. It's not clear to me, so I'd like someone to explain that to me again on the perimeters.
Do you notice a lot of traffic on Terry Street that doesn't live in that area, that comes down from the south, comes up to Terry? There's
Yes.
only a few streets that go east and west, Beach Road and Terry Street.
Yes. With the Logan Boulevard connection, this has become a cut-through route. And people are avoiding Bonita Beach Road to get to downtown Bonita, to get over the interstate. Yes.
And that doesn't cause you a problem?
Right now, the volumes, again, show the acceptable level of service. Now, in 5 or 10 years,
Oh, yeah, well, we'll be doing something. We'll be improving the roads. Thank you.
any other questions for me? And we'll get somebody to answer the berm question. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I might add, I've got a question on that.
Oh, okay.
Same question, maybe a different
Yeah, I just like,
concern than Amy has, so go with her first on that.
I just wanted someone to talk me through what you said in the, how you're going to use the berms and the setbacks in the areas where you can't meet the 15-foot requirement. And I think what well, why don't you explain to me, and I want to make sure I understand it, because my only concern would be having like a 5-foot setback against something that it's going to be problematic.
Sure.
Okay?
So the deviation requests the allowance to have fences, walls, or accessory structures no closer than 5 feet to the perimeter boundary. But the building will, the building where folks are actually living will be at a minimum of 10 feet in all locations. Primarily throughout the site, it will be 15 feet, which is the required perimeter setback per the code. But there's just a couple of areas where we're a little tight on that, so we're asking for this deviation. Where we are not meeting that 15-foot setback, that's where this condition 11 kicks in, and that's going to require some additional plantings and some buffering to those neighboring properties to alleviate that.
Two things. Could you tell me what an accessory structure is besides a fence? I mean, is that something different?
So an accessory structure can be a variety of things. It's a use or a structure that's not your primary use of the property. So if you, on a typical lot, maybe it might be something like a pool cage or something like that. We're not proposing that here, but just as an example.
I see, okay. And then could you just point out on the diagram where this less than 15 feet or 10 feet would be?
I can. We're looking at your stormwater map here, but it does the same thing. So along this property line here, we'll expect a fence 5 feet from the property line. Buildings will typically be 15 feet from the property line per the code. But I think there's a couple of spaces where we're less than 15 feet, 10 feet from the property line.
Yeah, I can help.
Rick can help here. The other area where we're a fence 5 feet from the property line is on the north property as well. So we're meeting all of our setbacks along East Terry. We're going to be meeting our setbacks along the eastern property line. It's just this north and west property lines that we are requesting this deviation.
Thank you.
Now, all those fences are gonna be on your property.
That's right.
You get to maintain both sides of it.
That's right.
They're not a
Correct.
zero setback. That's
Correct.
good. Yes, yes, Mike, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Fred.
My concern is real simple. Is there any place where the toe of the berm is going to be closer than 5 feet to a house?
Sorry, closer than 5 feet to a.
To the house or the rental apartment
On our property?
on your property?
No, there will not be.
Now, is that based on what width berm? Because we don't know what width it's got to be. Maybe Rick does, but I don't.
Yeah, I'll let Rick respond.
Let me go back to the plan. I'm a plan guy, sorry.
Yeah, good.
No. Help me out.
You hit the wrong button.
I sure did.
Small one.
Go ahead. Oh, okay, gotcha.
The small one where we want it to.
My kids set up my phone for me, so.
Oh,
Just like the
So really, this deviation that we're going over with the reduction from 15 feet to 10 feet, it's something that was in the original RPD. We kind of decided to keep it in there as far as a deviation. There really is only, I'm sorry, and we already laid out some unit types for Danville on some different mixes and stuff. Nothing set in stone yet, but there was actually one small area where we had one building that was 10 feet from the property line along the north west corner of the site. So we thought we'd keep this deviation in there just to address this one location where we have one building 10 foot from the property line. We would add some more landscaping along the north side, and that's really it. And when we start getting into the plans, we'll probably try to create that so it's 15 feet and not even use that deviation. But that was the spirit of why we included this deviation. But again, I'm hoping that we don't even need to put it into the plan.
well, have you got, based on what you know of the site and everything else, you have an idea how wide the berm's going to be?
Yes, we do. We haven't finalized the stormwater calculations yet.
Right.
But just to give you a little bit of background, the project to our west, the existing West Morton residential, they have a berm within their property, and then they have a swale along the property line. So we'll match that swale. We're going to keep that swale so it still provides drainage between our berm and their berm, and that swale directs all the excess runoff to East Terry Street. So we'll keep that swale in place, so that's going to dictate where the toe slope is, because we want to keep that swale invert so everything drains positively to East Terry Street. So the berm is actually going to be based on where that low contour is, and then raise it up. And the berm itself will probably have anywhere from a 2-foot kind of crest. But in most cases, you will not see a defined berm. It'll actually kind of just become the backyard of the properties. And then the properties themselves will drain to inlets and whatnot. So it won't be like you're walking over a hump. It's not going to be like a speed hump in a road or anything like that. It's just going to be a contouring that we make sure everything drains into the property and out of it. I hope that helps.
Would you be able to raise the elevation of the floor, so that means the dip on the one side of the berm is going to be higher up than it is on the outside of the berm, so to speak, off the property?
The floors are definitely going to be above the, we're not in a FEMA flood zone, so
Yeah.
it's going to be based on our 100-year elevation that we calculate from our water management design,
Right.
zero discharge. But yes, the buildings themselves will be over the 100-year elevation, and then we have the backyard areas, and like was being presented, there's going to be a fence 5 foot off the property. So the backyards will terrace down to match that berm, let's say. So we're going to be having a high floor elevation and then coming back down to the backyards gradually. And then inlets all over the place to make sure this water stays on property and is directed to the lake system.
Can you show on this map where that easement that's going to be turned over to the city's located again?
It's nice and colored in yellow right there.
Oh, okay.
And it's 10 foot wide, and it's to include a multi-use trail.
Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you.
Council, are we gonna go on and on with this, or are we ready to wrap it up?
I make motion to approve.
Second. On one condition, we have two outstanding conditions on the traffic that we're still trying to resolve.
And I can wrap up by handing out those proposed changes to the conditions now and let you all move on.
Could we have the staff's opinion about these two conditions,
Is
please?
Tom Ross available? Okay. So our staff, traffic consultant, Tom Ross, is available. He can kind of just give an explanation maybe of what his condition was based on. So I just want to give a little bit of a recap. At the zoning board meeting, prior to the zoning board meeting, there had been a lot of back and forth with the staff, and Jeremy can correct me if I'm wrong, on what the condition involved. When Mr. Ross testified, it seemed far more constrained. We've been working towards just reaching what his request was ever since then. So we just haven't been able to translate that into writing. So if you want to hear Mr. Ross's version of that, he's available, and then maybe that'll help you to make your decision.
Can we, there's a motion and a second, can we vote on it?
No.
No, because you still need to decide the conditions unless the motion contains.
Okay,
You got
can I make
public
it,
comment, too.
can I?
Yeah, we still.
Can I remove my second, and then if Laura would like to amend her motion, then we can try to redo this. So I would like to rescind my second momentarily.
And I'll amend to hear the,
Tom, are you available? Can you hear us?
Yes, I am.
thank you, Jesse.
Hey, Tom, before you get going, let me go ahead and put up the traffic slides in the staff presentation for you.
All right, thank you.
So my recommendation, let Mr. Ross give his staff presentation on the traffic conditions. Then Mr. France come back up, and he can hand out the versions if you want, or Mr. France, if you want to do that right now, just hand them to the city clerk at the end there. She'll pass them up so that they can read both sets next to each other, and then we can do a motion with the conditions, open up the public hearing, and vote.
I'm just going to scoot to the traffic slides for Tom. All right, Tom.
All right. Regarding, I believe it's condition 6, which is the traffic monitoring. The concern is that the applicant has proposed in their TIS that this site will function as a multifamily development. Unfortunately, due to the configuration of the buildings, as they pointed out, that they're actually more representative of single-family homes, staff isn't convinced that the trip generation rates won't be higher than multifamily. Just so you know, the ITE trip generation rates for single-family homes and for multifamily units are substantially different. Single-family homes typically generate traffic twice as much, or twice the frequency than a multifamily unit. So that's where the concern is, and staff is requesting a monitoring so that we can verify what the trip generation is for the site once the site has been built and is fully occupied. Now, regarding condition 5, which is the evaluation of the different configurations, I think the next slide will help illustrate this. So this is the existing intersection at Terry and Kent. It's, as Ted Treese mentioned, it's a 3-way intersection. And this diagram represents the conflict points that occur at the intersection. Every intersection has conflict points where vehicles cross each other's path. So each of those dots shown there in the diagram represent a conflict point. The 3 dots in the middle, which are the clear ones, they represent the crossing conflict points where vehicles actually cross each other's path, and that's where you're most likely to have angle collisions and T-bone type collisions. Now, it's not to say that this happens every day. Of course, it doesn't, but it is the potential for those to happen. Now, the next slide shows a four-way intersection. You can see a dramatic increase in the number of conflict points. And this is simply the complexity of the different number of movements that happen when you have vehicles turning left out and left in from the additional leg through the other traffic. So you create additional traffic conflict points. And this is the concern where we want to evaluate whether or not this is the best approach for this location. So one of the items is to look at, of course, the traffic signal. Now, Ted Treesh mentioned that it would not meet the warrants. However, that analysis has not been completed yet and not submitted to the city in order to demonstrate that. So that will be one thing that will be looked at to better control these conflict points. One of the other options that was in the condition that staff is recommending would be shown on the next slide, which would be to evaluate a roundabout. As you can see, the roundabout shows significantly fewer conflict points, and none of those are crossing conflict points. Now, this isn't to say that this is definitive and that this is the best alternative for this location, and that's why we're requesting that that analysis and evaluation be done so we can make that decision with all the information available. That analysis has not been completed at this point, and that's simply what Condition 5 is requesting.
May I make a comment?
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I watched this on zoning, I thought, you're asking, you're calling it Soltora, to do your homework. They've provided you data that shows that existing communities like this exist with traffic patterns of Y. And you're doubting it, and then you're saying, now prove it. Well, you can't prove the negative. And if you look at how this community is, it's not exactly single-family homes. It's apartments. So it's students, it's nurses, it's, interns. And they're coming home, and there's amenities at the place, so they can go to the pool, they can go probably eat or what. I have no idea what the amenity, but I saw a pool. And so I think that they're going to stay home. Personally, less travels than going to pick up the kids from football, going to pick up the kids from soccer, going to pick up the kids from tennis, and, heading out to play pickleball. So I believe that they've shown there isn't going to be, and why is the onus on them to show differently when they've already shown you in similar communities this is the way it is? And if it isn't, we can change it.
Counsel, yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Did you
I
second,
think-
did
I-
you
I feel-
second her? Did she make a new motion?
I just took my second back so we could let them talk. So I'll redo the second after we talk again, if everybody likes.
Are you commenting on the conditions?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to hear what you want to say.
Okay, so as far as the conditions go, I feel as if they've crossed their T's and dotted their I's, and really it's kind of the same argument I have with the complete streets. They followed our zoning, so if we potentially feel that there's something different or we don't like that, I think that's really the potential of something happening. I don't think is cause for us to put undue financial additions into a project that has met all of the environmental zoning. And I do appreciate the fact they went from 3 feet to 2 feet. So they gave a concession within there, and from what it was to what it will be with the on top of the environmental side, I don't know why we would be having them look at the cost of a stoplight or a roundabout where it's not necessarily merited. I understand where staff's going, trying to be protective and forward-thinking and understanding where East Terry's at, but I feel as if we're kind of adding a little bit more than would, So for example, a year, I'm not sure if we have precedent for doing a year on somebody or not, but if we,
Well, I think the question, where I'm looking at the primary difference between the two conditions, and staff can correct me, or the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, is the time at which the counts are done. So under the applicant's conditions, they just have to be submitted within a year, which means they could be submitted right after it's built.
Right.
And staff is trying to capture at least one seasonal cycle.
Oh, I
They
thought
could
it
do-
said
you
in
could do that
season.
3 days during season, I think is what it says. So, I mean, my issue is I don't mind the traffic counts at all. That's part standard procedure, but do it during the height of season and do it the same way we do it with everybody else. So if the standard operating procedure is they get 5 days, they get 5 days because we feel it might be a little bit more, it might not. That isn't really, I think that's more policy oriented than, at the end of the day, zoning is supposed to look at, are they within the zoning that they've applied for? Yes. Is their density what it's supposed, is there any change in the density? Is there any change in the height? Have they met the environmental mitigation? If they've done all those things, I don't really feel it's our place to be adding additional boxes for them to check. If we feel there's boxes that need to be checked in regards to traffic or other things like that, those are things we holistically need to work on within our own zoning, and then I have no problem putting those conditions on people who want to do it in the future. But I feel adding extra things along those lines, which I'm sure is probably a pretty hefty price tag, not the direction I would generally like to go. And look, staff, I totally know where you're going with this, and I appreciate what you're trying to do with it. So don't take this as me saying staff is completely out in left field. I don't think you are. I think what your intent is good here, but I don't necessarily feel it's appropriate.
Fred,
Yeah, well, are you done, Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're
Okay,
good.
well, are we sure that if they do, when they do their count, that it'll be in the high season? I don't want any of this thing where you take it in August and then put a multiplier on it, because that don't work. As long as it's in the season, ideally in the month of March is,
Peak season.
yeah, peak season.
It says 3 days during peak season. And I mean, maybe it's even a little bit longer, but I mean, honestly, I just
I
feel,
just don't know how you define peak season. That's the issue.
well, I mean, I think based on our population, yeah, I mean, call it March.
it's a dead-end street, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a process question. Isn't it typical for us to analyze, I mean, to do a traffic study where we give, is this extra, are we actually asking them for something extra? That's what I'm not clear of. I know that our experts thinks that it is a potential problem. Don't we usually do that when we have a development? It's not unusual for him to do a report, is it? Or do we ask him for a special report?
It's not completely unusual, but yes, I guess it would be considered extra if you look at the administrative code and it lays out what the guidelines are for a TIS. I will mention that in those guidelines, it sets them up as baseline requirements. Baseline meaning minimum standards.
So even if you wanted to do a little extra, it's not outlandish to even ask for that.
We don't think so in this case.
And I guess my question is, like, if down the road we decide there is a problem with the intersection and we want to do something like a roundabout, should we ask for some kind of an easement about a potential roundabout, or would we have to come and ask them for?
You would have to know that their
You'd have to know
their
that-
traffic is causing the issue in order to make it a condition of the project.
Condition, so you couldn't do that. So that's why a study might be better than asking them for an easement, right?
I think the argument would be impact fees, I think, are supposed to do that, and they're gonna pay those.
Right, but an impact fee is supposed to reflect on what you're gonna do, you know? Anyway, I'm comfortable with.
Can we end this?
I'm comfortable with the count. I'm still sort of hedging.
I would only ask one more question, and that's to see if either staff or the applicant want to have anything additional. And then you also have condition change number 11, which I don't know if there's any disagreement on that.
No, that's okay.
Fine with that.
Yeah, there were various options for condition 11 with how to handle the perimeter setback. The applicant submitted another option earlier this week, which we are in agreement with, and it was the option that they showed in their presentation as well, that accessory structures are to be at least 5 feet from the perimeter, and no principal structure should be closer than 10 feet. The rest of the language remains relatively the same, and the rest of the language is what was passed by the zoning board, essentially saying anything closer than the required 15-foot perimeter setback is going to have a planting plan to help soften it with the surrounding homes, and we believe that's an adequate way to handle it.
So, council members, at this point, it sounds like staff is in agreement on condition 11. So your two decision points and your motion are conditions 5 and 6. I don't read them between the staff and the applicant versions as mutually exclusive, so you're free to pick one of each or pick them both. We still do have public hearings, so if you can either make the motion now, then open up the public
I'd
hearing
like to
for
make the motion to approve.
Okay. But then you also have to open up the public hearing before the vote, that's all.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Public
With,
comment?
with the condition, you're saying with their conditions, right? Allowing them,
Which set of conditions?
with the, yes, second.
Oh.
Yes, second.
I read that as that.
Public comment?
Okay.
Any more comments? Roll call, please.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Here we go.
okay. Your name's Johnny? Johnny come lately?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and
Yes, sir.
council members. I'm Brad Cornell, and I'm here on behalf of Audubon, Florida and Audubon Western Everglades. Appreciate the opportunity to address you on this. I put my slip in, but obviously didn't tell anybody which item I was going to address. So Saltura Rezone is an interesting project that we've reviewed for a couple of issues, two issues. One is that the preserve is pretty small, 1.69 acres, and we believe that this project would benefit from the three lakes being enhanced with larger littoral plantings for wading bird foraging. So I've talked briefly with the applicant and their representatives. I think they would be receptive to working with this issue to try and improve the littoral plantings and the acreage of that, the expanse of that for the benefit of wading birds.
Amen.
This is something we want to do on all projects that have lakes, which is most of them. So there are 3 lakes, and this is a good opportunity. And then the only other thing I wanted to point out is in your 2018 Flood Reduction and Watershed Restoration Plan, you've identified a number of parcels throughout the city that do not have housing currently. And the idea of that was to look for places that you can store water in storm situations. And as we all know from what happened after Irma in 1998, 1995, there's plenty of reasons in these floodplains to find places to put water that's not in people's homes. So I just point out that this parcel, which is already zoned for 200 units and is being rezoned for a different project, is a difficult one to consider for that, but I do want to point out that it was on that plan as another opportunity to look for stormwater retention projects. And to the north of this, there are some agricultural lands. There are other parcels that I think the council and the city should be looking at for creating more storage for stormwater. I just wanted to flag that because this was one of those in that plan. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Could I ask Brad a question? Brad, are you aware that the city has 275 acres, not really that far from this place, that's intended to be water storage? Would that make you feel better if this one happens to get developed?
Well, of course, there's, Councilor Forbes, as you know, where do you draw the line and say, oh, we have enough storage now? I don't think we're ever going to have enough for the large watershed that contributes to the Imperial River watershed. So when we're looking at how do we mitigate the threat of flooding in East Bonita Springs or Bonita Springs in general, a lot of Bonita Springs is in the 5-year floodplain. So yes, it does make me feel better. More is better.
One thing I need to point out is it was agreed when we went to get it that we would put an embankment around of several feet, maybe 3 feet high, which multiplies that 275 acres quite a bit, storage capacity.
Added capacity. So engineering certainly can help. From Audubon's perspective, we like wetland restoration, like the Southern Crew project out past Kiel Canal. That was a great project, 4,000 acres. There's more in the Flint Penn Strand that you can collaborate with Lee County and the Water Management District. All those kinds of things, whether it's engineered or restoration, you need them all of the above.
Okay,
Thanks.
And can
Sure.
I ask, can I,
Yes,
one question for you too? Could you send us obviously, I understand what you're saying for what we're about to vote on, that's not gonna be relevant to what we're exactly voting on right now. What I'm
Except for
saying is-
the littoral zones,
Well,
and that doesn't change your
for me,
vote, it's
no.
just a direction of,
And I hear what you're saying. For me, it's water capacity. As long as the capacity is there, then we can do the things that we need. I understand what you're saying, though, and I saw the same thing. My question, I guess, really, you're talking about how you holistically think that development should work moving forward to address all of the issues that you talked about. Do you have that condensed down into something that you can share with us so that each time we have a development thing, the Audubon doesn't come up and we're like, oh yeah, we should look into that. If those are significant issues that you're going to have on a reoccurring basis, I'd like to, whether I agree with them or don't agree with them, I want to at least know what they are.
absolutely. So if you're talking about the littoral zones for habitat
This is public comment.
foraging, what's that?
Nothing.
Nothing. Please
You're
continue.
good.
If you're talking about enhancing foraging habitat value for lakes, and most of your projects are going to have lakes. So we've worked with, for instance, Collier County, and so in their land development code, they've got incentives to concentrate your littoral zones in one place in the lake rather than spread them out all over the fringe. And that's ecologically, it's much better for wading birds. So that's an example, and so I can certainly send you that example.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ready to vote now?
If there's no other public comment, I would ask if the applicant has any rebuttal to the public comment. Is there, maybe with respect to the wading birds?
Don't have any rebuttal, but available if you have any questions.
Oh, can we call a vote, roll call?
What are we voting on?
You're voting on the applicants to set of conditions.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Just on the conditions or the whole thing?
No,
The whole thing with the.
With the conditions.
With the condition. Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna take a break. We'll see you at 7 o'clock.
Consent
I think
agenda.
we're consent agenda now.
Proclamation?
Oh, no,
Nine
yeah, we do
B,
have the
yeah,
other
9A
proclamation,
we
yeah.
can take care of. So, Mike Gibson, you're gonna present the
Am I doing it up here or-
proclamation.
Yeah, all right.
We gotta go up front, get your
Well,
picture
that's-
taken.
Yeah.
All right, we can get a picture taken afterwards here.
We can maybe take a picture of all of council.
Okay, that works.
Okay.
All right. So whereas the city of Bonita Springs priorities include the completion of multimodal pathways to enhance bicycle safety, and whereas the city of Bonita Springs road and trail systems attract bicyclists each year, providing economic health, transportation, tourism, and scenic benefits, and whereas creating a bicycle-friendly community has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, quality of life, attract tourism dollars, and reduce pollution, congestion, and wear and tear on our streets and roads. Now, therefore, our Mayor, Rick Steinmeier, on behalf of Bonita City Council, hereby proclaim May 2022 as Bicycle Safety Month in the city of Bonita Springs, and urge all bicyclists to practice bike safety and all road users to share the road safely with bicyclists.
Okay. We've got consent agenda. Do you want to introduce this, or do we just?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, did you read it?
Yeah.
I guess you all did.
Councilman,
Call for a vote.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Okay, Race Crossworks on West Terry Street.
All right, so me again.
That's it, that's Mike. There you go.
So, we've been talking about the crosswalks. We're going to be adding the beacons there to help out. But I know we're also going to be doing a sidewalk on the south side of the road, down the road. And as part of that, I just wanted us to see if we could look at doing the raised crosswalks when that comes around to aid in slowing down car traffic and make it safer for the pedestrians to cross the road. So mainly I'm just looking for direction to staff so that way when this does come around, when we do the sidewalk plan on the south side of the road, that we take a look at doing the raised crosswalks.
I think that's a good idea, Mike.
Does that be a CIP, or are you saying that would be?
Well, we already have the money in there to do the sidewalks, or the sidewalk on the south side of the road.
You already have a CIP project for the south side of Terry Street, so I think what I'm understanding is the direction is to incorporate in that plan, looking at the raised crosswalks.
Yeah, because to do it now, when we're going to be tearing up the road again to do the sidewalk, it's undoing stuff to redo it, so it just makes, it'd be nice to have them sooner than later, but, as far as the right way of doing it, it's best to do it when we do the other sidewalk, so.
I agree.
I agree that we should incorporate it in our planning. Do we need an analysis to see how they, what exactly we're talking about,
I think if you go the direction Councilman Gibson's talking about, that would be done at the time of the development of this project. And to give you a sense, Councilman Purdon, it's in our CIP. We actually just received proposals for multiple engineering firms on the 28th. And so this issue in terms of selecting an engineering firm will be coming back to you, in a month and a half or so after the selection committee meets.
And the additional cost?
Yeah.
Right, that's kind of.
Well, I mean, that'll all be, you can address
Wasn't
that
in
because
the-
we're not under contract at this point. This is all just starting. So it's a complicated project. It'll take a few years to get, through, but we can evaluate it during that
So
process.
it'll be like, what are the tasks that are in the contract?
Sure.
And to consider evaluate the efficacy of doing that and the kinds that might be proposed. But I definitely agree that we should do it in conjunction with our design for the south.
Yes, Fred.
After she's done,
I'm done.
oh, okay. Two questions. I'm assuming that now we're still putting the lighted crosswalk. And we won't lose those when we put in the higher one. We can salvage them and move them up or what?
Yeah, they would certainly be usable.
Now, the one thing I want to make clear to the audience, both here and the viewing audience, the raised area simply makes it more difficult to speed when it hits that thing. It does not take them down to a dead stop or even 5 or 10. It brings you down close to the speed limit if you're exceeding it. That's the purpose of it. I think there's a misconception among some that it almost makes you stop, and it doesn't. So.
That's correct. If they're designed correctly, they're made to go whatever the speed limit of the road is. As you go faster than that, it's a harder and harder hit on the car.
And
But
it's
if you're
not-
doing the speed limit, it's
And we
not as
we
noticeable.
couldn't get the approval of like the first responders if you had to come to almost a dead stop to go over it, because they have to approve them too.
Okay, I have a suggestion that the staff evaluate these flashing lights once they're installed to see if they're actually making any improvement in the safety, to have some idea what we're spending this $250,000, whether it's gonna really keep people safe. And to put the sidewalk on the south side of the Terry, you look, there's a big ditch there. There's a lot of work involved in putting that sidewalk. They have a 10-foot sidewalk on the other side of the road. I don't think it's a matter of priorities, but that's my opinion. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, yeah?
Yes.
I concur with you, which means I agree with you. And I would like to see what the evaluation is with the blinking lights, and then what the emergency rescue fire and ambulance, think about the raised sidewalks and the raised level. And, if it's okay with them and if it's going to slow down, response time, I think we need to think about it. And perhaps just the blinking lights will work. And
May I make a recommendation?
yes, sir.
Because I think we're going down two parallel paths. Would a motion that indicates per Vice Mayor Gibson that we look at doing that at the time that the intersection improvements are done, but with a requirement that the engineering team take into account changes that may have occurred at a study as a result of the lighting pattern. So if it's determined that it's which still have some value, then it could be considered. If not, but as an option at that point. So
That would be great.
So moved.
Second, yeah.
Okay.
Didn't we, the former council, turn down the speed tables at one point?
Yes,
I thought they did.
yes.
Okay. Well, it's something in the future to think about. We don't have to decide that tonight.
Right.
Okay.
Roll call?
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba? Aye. Councilman Purdon?
Okay, there's a vacant building at 27-120 Old 41. That the city owns it. The Wonder Gardens wanted to use it, but they decided they don't want to use it anymore. And I'd like a discussion as to what we're gonna do with it.
It's water damaged, and I think we should tear it down.
I agree.
Mold infested, insect infected.
It also is structurally way deficient. It's gonna cost, I doubt if you could get it fixed.
It was built in 47.
Yeah, well, it was, but it's,
It's 1 year older than
My
me.
husband was too.
I understand that, but the roof in the main restaurant is, you look at the spacing of the roof supports and the size they are, and it's a miracle it's lasted this long.
Exactly.
Well, can we make a motion to tear it down tonight?
Yes,
Yes,
I'll make a motion to tear it down.
I'll
Second.
second.
Yeah.
Can I add to that motion that we design a public parking behind that property for the Wonder Gardens and for other people downtown that,
The public.
I think we should take it
Knock
up at
down
a,
first.
Yeah,
Let's knock it down.
yeah, let's
Knock it down first, and then we
vote.
can figure that out.
And then we could decide what to do with any space that's there later.
what did we come up with on that?
We have to vote to take it down
Let's
first.
take it down first, and we
Yeah.
can,
and then you could do a green sheet.
And
Well,
we-
I would add that there's additional considerations for a parking lot. There's also a right-of-way in that area that could be vacated, so you might want to take a longer study of the parking lot after it's been taken down.
it might be helpful to keep those options separate because we can look at a comprehensive plan for parking in the downtown.
Right.
Okay, I just don't want to tear it down and let it sit there empty
Mm-hmm. We won't.
for forever, you know.
I'd almost tack on something else that needs to be tore down too.
Okay,
I said.
do we have a problem with the Historic Preservation Board?
Well, the direction we just received is to move forward with a demolition. So the staff will process the appropriate permits through the Historic Preservation Board and start the process. You also have a CIP specifically for this item, so we have funding. And we have contractors who are already on an approved list that we can use for the process.
Okay, call for a vote?
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Well, we made progress. That wasn't too bad. Okay, let's see, city attorney reports. Are you done for the night?
I'm done for the night.
Oh, good. But the city manager, she has something for us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to ask the Assistant City Manager to just give you a quick update on Logan Boulevard.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, there's been progress made on the interlocal between the city and the South Florida Water Management District. The district's been working to develop an emergency plan to assist East Bonita communities in an Irma-type situation. The district did hold a meeting last week where they presented that plan, draft plan, to the Big Cypress Basin Board. And at that meeting, concerns were raised about our pending 404 permit application and the operation of pumps. We recommend withdrawing the 404 permit application, and we submit a request to the district that they operate any pumps under the plan that they are developing.
You need a motion? on
Yes, sir.
I make that motion.
Second.
Any other comment? Roll call, please.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Grumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye. Well,
Thank you, Mayor and Council. One other announcement, we've been working with Lee County and their DOT in regards to Benny Beach Road. Wanted to advise, at previous council, I think quite a few years ago, we drafted a letter about the concerns at safety at Hunter's Ridge, and that the Lee County DOT was going to be looking to make a closure there. We're getting closer to that time frame, so we wanted to keep everyone advised. And Lee County is looking to reconfirm the need for that as well. So we'll be verifying with that with their staff. That's the median closure by Hunter's Ridge.
And most of Hunter's Ridge wants it closed.
Correct. So we'll be confirming that in writing with them, and they're going to be moving forward with that.
okay, is that it?
That's all I have for
That's
this.
all you got? Very good. Council reports, you got anything, Fred?
Yeah, one thing I'm pleased to announce, in 2017, MPO, basically Lee County, all the commissioners voted in favor of it. We agreed that we would try and get I-75 in Lee County and Charlotte County, and hopefully eventually in Collier, but at least those two counties, designated as a Purple Heart Highway. Unfortunately, the meeting we were at, the station was already in being, so we couldn't do it that year, and then COVID came along, but we got the ball put in the end zone this year. And so I'm really pleased that that happened. I had some reasonable things to do with it, but also the mayor of Punta Gorda did too. But now, the next thing that happens is somewhere plaques will be made up, bronze plaques saying it's Purple Heart Highway. My plan is to ask all the veteran organizations, VFW, American Legion, AMVETS, all those, both counties, if they wouldn't adopt putting up a plaque and some, maybe even a list of the Purple Heart recipients from Lee County and Collier, and Charlotte, at the two rest stops. We have two rest stops opposite each other, north and southbound, in Lee County. There's two north and south up in Charlotte, and that would be something that the veterans themselves could do to recognize. So anyway, that's the big thing.
Oh, good deal, good deal. Amy, do you have anything for us tonight?
No, I just want to mention that I did attend Sheriff Carmine Marcino's Community Festival up in
good.
Fort Myers, and it was a wonderful thing to see all the families there, and they had all their units there, from the bomb squad to the snipers to the Marine unit to the dog squad to the equestrian unit. So it was wonderful to know that we have all these operations available to us should we need them, and thank goodness we don't need them. Or at least we're not aware that we need them. So it was a comforting thing to me, and I love the way that the young people interact with the sheriff units that were there, and I think it was a very positive experience. I also attended the Downtown Alliance meeting where Dr. Michael Martin, whom I had mentioned in the past, the retiring president of FGCU, and he gave a wonderful presentation, and it reinforced my idea that it would be nice if we could honor him in some way for all the interactions that we've had with our city and the college that has grown tremendously under his leadership.
And we have made arrangements with his office to have him attend.
Well, that's great. And I also want to thank our staff because they work with me with the Blue Zone Zeering Committee questions that needed to be answered in order on the process to getting certification. And particularly, I want to mention Sean Gibbons and of course Arlene and Matt all participated in an effort to try to get a report ready that has to be, that I need for my meeting at the steering committee on the 10th. So I think I really appreciate that. And finally, I just want to recognize all the mothers that we will be honoring this Sunday. Those that are here and those that are not here. But in Bonita Springs, we recognize families, and we start with our mothers. So happy Mother's Day to all our resident mothers.
Okay, Jesse, we'll go over to you now.
Yes, sir. Real quick, some cool news on water stuff. We had FGCU had reached out to the congressional office recently, and they're 18 months waiting on permits from Army Corps of Engineers. They're actually in the process of doing an artificial reef about 7.5 miles off Wiggins Pass. So it's in the middle of Lee and Collier waters, and this artificial reef project is a huge deal. Parsons was running point on it. There's a lot of dollars, a ton of research and things like that. The problem was it was all of the funding sources that they had were tied to grants that were time sensitive, meaning if they didn't break ground on the reef this year, in the next couple months, all of the funding was gone and then all the research was gone. We reached out to the Colonel of the Army Corps of Engineers, and 36 hours later they had their approvals. So the Vester Water School will be running point on that, and it's going to be pretty cool for Estero Bay and really Lee and Collier, and really research moving forward, because the reefs really bring a lot of ecological benefit, and I think it's going to be really cool to see our regional partner get the ability to do that. So, yeah, and then Mother's Day, yes, shout out to all the mothers out there. I've got a lot of special ones in my life, so thank you for everything you've done to get me where I'm at.
Very good. Laura?
I too was at Sheriff Morosino's event. It was wonderful, lots of families, and it was fun to see all the kids kind of interact, and the sheriffs being so into interacting with the young. Prayers for the folks in Ukraine, and I'd like to inform that the Rotary of Bonita, well, at least the 7 a.m. meeting, has donated $13,000, and overall, internationally, millions of dollars from the Rotary is flying in to help, not money flying in, aid flying in to help the folks in Ukraine. And God bless our governor. Just love him. And God bless America.
Okay, Mike?
I'm good, thanks.
You're good, Chris?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay, I have something here, the rooftop at Riverside. I'm not sure if everybody's invited, but they're having a groundbreaking ceremony on the Tuesday the 10th at 5 o'clock. I got my invitation. I'm hoping it's all right to invite the world. So we'll see you all on the 10th on Tuesday at 5 o'clock.
Tuesday the 10th?
Tuesday the 10th, May 10th.
May 10th, okay.
Beginning at 5 o'clock.
Anything free?
It says kindly RSVP with your preferred t-shirt size by May 6th by Chris Mungin. Anyways, the cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, t-shirts will be provided. So I might be in trouble, but you all come down and see us. So that's a good thing. Finally, they put out the money. They own the property now. They're getting going on it. It's been like 2 years. So I'm real happy they're moving. Approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Vote, please.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Corumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Okay, how about public comment? Anybody got public comment for us? No? All right, we must have satisfied your, oh, here we go.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Kyle Moran. I first came to this area 30 years ago and proud to be in Bonita and downtown most every day. It's been quite disturbing, though. Recently, there seems to be a lot of misinformation flying in the community about a critical project to our community, the Bamboo Village site. For what it's worth, that site was taken down almost 20 years ago by this city as part of a big redevelopment effort. In fact, if you do an inventory along the old 41 corridor between Oak Creek and Imperial River, and for what it's worth, I put something on the public record about this, going back for the historical photos. Anyone can do it online. It's all out there between the Historical Society and Lee County Property Appraiser. But there were block after block of properties that followed that masthead property as the city was going to do this transformative project, taking 135 trailer homes and doing some new revitalization project. We saw block after block, if you look from Dean Street to Abernathy to Hampton and on all the way up, there's a full record as part of the public record on this. And to stop now in that redevelopment would be a tremendous shame to the city. And just to address specifically some of the misinformation that's happening out there, it's being said that by redeveloping that site, we're going to increase density. The proposed project is 120 apartments. In the past, we had 135 trailer homes. That's not more density, that's less. It's being said that by redeveloping that project, we're going to threaten our environment. Those 135 trailer homes had really rudimentary sewer technology. We're putting brand new, up to code, FEMA and everything, apartments there. Those are going to be much safer for the environment. It's being said that by redeveloping there, we're going to be subjecting ourselves to environmental vulnerability. The reality is nothing was more vulnerable than having ground level trailer homes there for both flooding and for wind damage. So now we're going to have real robust construction there, which I think will be much, much better for keeping us all safe. I think it's important to point out that there are some odd comments about traffic congestion. 120 apartments, we just saw it in today's meeting. That the statistics from the city's own traffic engineer show that apartments don't kick off much traffic. So that there is traffic congestion in our downtown. But if we want to do something about it, we can designate downtown pedestrian friendly and do something about the heavy commercial through traffic that's coming through. And there's a tremendous amount of misinformation that's happening about parking there. This city has made a huge investment in public parking. We're even talking about creating more public parking in front of the Wonder Gardens now. But there are 600 public parking spots that have been created across that city. And I'm downtown every day, and I know a lot of you are too, especially Councilman Gibson and others. The reality is the vast majority of those public parking spots are totally empty every single day. But we have a test a couple times a year. We have a test on art fair days. And it so happens that the Lee County Appraiser happened to have a satellite shot of our whole parking situation. And when you zoom in, you get a really good sense of how we're using and not using parking. So for instance, there are a lot of cars that show up at Bamboo Village, but they park in a very spread apart, not tightly and efficiently parked way, number one. Number two, I would please ask for additional time. Number two, across the street on Feltz, the city owns nearly an acre there that's now used for stormwater management, but has the ability to accommodate parking. Just a matter of activating that. We also have a 2-acre lot that the city purchased for public parking there. And you can see it on art fair days, there are fewer than 20 cars there. We also have a huge area all along Front Street. And when you look at the satellite images, you can see all the way south of Abernathy, when we're talking 60 parking spots, totally empty. So the reality is that even on these art fair days, when a lot of people from the community come to visit the downtown before we redevelop more for them to visit on a more regular occasion, we're hardly using the parking there. And it should also be mentioned that art fairs are a private business. So why is it the public's concern that there may not have adequate parking there? So I really want to thank this city council and the mayor for your level-headed leadership through this, through all of the misinformation. I also want to thank a very capable, really expert-level staff that has guided us through this. It's been a very long time, but this is redevelopment. And when that site has something positive happen to it, we can expect for the first time in 15 or 20 years that the rest of the downtown will finally be unhandcuffed, because those other vacant lots have been waiting for that highly visible site to do something great. So it's stopping redevelopment now of that site would be akin to building a flyover our downtown, one of these big flyover bridges. It would be a shame, because it would guarantee that for the rest of history, our downtown was simply another throughway from Fort Myers to Naples. So I appreciate your leadership in going forward with this project. I hope that we all keep in mind the amount of deconstruction that we've done downtown and the incredible public investment that we made in things like parking that's appreciated. And so we see through this misinformation and get to the truth and move forward as a community. So thank you all.
Thank you.
you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Motion.
Anybody else? Public comment? Motion to adjourn. We're out of here. Thanks.